Q&A. It's Tuesday. It's 1:00. I'm joined by James Schiano. Is this your Q&A debut, my friend?
Yes, this is my Q&A maiden voyage with the
Nice.
Rotoworld family, which is
Welcome.
fun. Appreciate it.
Welcome. We are thrilled and happy to have you.
Thanks.
A big weekend of news. I'm sure that we are going to get to all of it. However, you're a big Mets fan.
Huge Mets fan. Massive.
Where's your Grimace gear right now?
My Grimace gear. No, I wore my suit over the whole weekend, so it's actually at the dry cleaners right now, my full purple suit. But
Nice.
it's fun. The Mets have a long history of weird, strange good luck charms that have come through. Even this year alone, we had a veteran of the game named Seymour Wiener and a rally pimp who still wears big furs to the game. We had a parakeet for when Yoenis Cespedes took them on the run 2015. They had a black cat in the 80s, the 70s, whenever that black cat was. The Mets are just famous for these strange rally cries. And right now we have another one, so we might as well use it while we got it.
Yeah, why not? You know what? It's working. We got a lot of people that we just had an influx of viewers. A lot of people want to talk about Grimace. But no, we're going to talk about a lot of the news and notes. Obviously, you can ask your questions here on YouTube. You can ask your questions on Twitch. We will try to get to all of them as much as possible. We'll be here for about 45 minutes. The big news in the New York baseball circles, other than the Mets 6-0 record since Grimace, is that Ben Rice was called up. Anthony Rizzo is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks with a fracture in his arm. So the Yankees called up Ben Rice, who is traditionally, I guess, a catcher who they've been using at first base. The question from Dad, Dad is in here every week. Hey, Dad. Is whether we should be speculating and adding Ben Rice. I'm curious your interest level in Ben Rice and in what formats you would be interested.
I think there definitely is a speculative interest in Ben Rice. He has always made good swing decisions in the minor leagues, always had really good quality of contact. I saw today from a post by Fireside Yankees, Ryan Garcia, that he ran a 20% barrel rate last year in the minor leagues, which as an older prospect coming up, it seems like someone relatively ready to contribute. And I think a big piece with Ben Rice is, along with the Rizzo injury, just how bad he's been playing this year. If Ben Rice plays well enough, this will just mostly be his job going forward. So a 15, 16 team league, I'm definitely adding him. If I need help in a corner spot, I'm definitely adding him. And at 12, I might as well give it a shot and let this week go and see.
Yeah, I think it also depends on your format, right? Because Yahoo, he is catcher eligible. If you get catcher eligibility for him, obviously it's going to be even more enticing. The Yankees have said he's going to start at first against righties, and then DJ LeMahieu will start at first against lefties. Now, the interesting thing to note is that the Yankees get 4 left-handed pitchers this week. So if you are in a weekly league, you're not going to get a lot of Ben Rice this week, but you're going to get enough of him. He'll start tonight against Albert Suarez. A couple things that I found noteworthy when I was looking through some stuff on Ben Rice today. There was a tweet from let me pull it up so I can give everybody this information. But there was a tweet from Ryan Garcia who said at AAA, Ben Rice has a 12th percentile zone contact rate. And he's rocking a 379 BABIP at AAA right now. So if you look at his AAA stats, I think you're going to see an inflated batting average. He hit 261 in AA this year. The on-base percentage will play for sure. There is power in the bat, but I don't know that a guy who hit 261
I think we lost Eric's sound for a little bit. Can you guys hear
me? The browser dropped connection to my mic. Are we back?
There we go. Yeah, you're good. You're good. Oh, my God, scared me.
So I was just saying Ben Rice, 12th percentile zone contact at AAA right now with a 380 BABIP. hit 261 at AA as a 25-year-old, which isn't a great batting average, but again, he brings power, he brings solid on base percentage. So I wouldn't add him expecting like a really strong batting average, but there's counting stat opportunities in a good lineup. The power is for real, and he gets a boost in OPS and on base percentage leagues because that plate discipline you talked about is really good. So just keep those things in mind with the batting average and the fact that he's going to sit against lefties, but certainly worth a speculative add, particular in Yahoo leagues where you can also use him as a catcher.
And like you all said in the beginning, the fact that not gonna play against lefties, daily league, he seems like someone who should definitely be added because you can mix and match those matchups, find the easy righties he can hit against, especially in Yankee Stadium. You could look at some very easy home runs for the next few weeks.
Yes, for sure. There's a question from Jetta about Rice's teammate. Is Gleyber Torres droppable in a 12-team league? What is your opinion? Is Gleyber Torres droppable in a 12-team league?
I hate dropping a guy like Gleyber. Like, I want to save him before July because he still plays every day. He's still in a really good lineup. The power and the speed aren't there, but they're not zeros. And projections for the rest of the season still love him. It's just, I think in a 12, you might be hard pressed to find a guy on the wire that is better than him, especially in the middle infield. Maybe if you're just purely hunting speed, like a guy like David Hamilton, who is stealing every single base under the sun, probably can be more valuable. But I don't know. It might even just be me, like my own fantasy baseball philosophical thing. I hate dropping a guy who's like such a sure thing like Gleyber this early.
Yeah, and I think like depending on your league scoring in Yahoo formats over the last 2 weeks, actually over the last month in Yahoo formats, he's the 224th ranked player. That's not good, but that's not necessarily somebody where you're like, I have to drop him. And that's with him not hitting. I mean, that's propped up by 13 runs, 14 RBIs over the last 27 games, 4 home runs over that last month, which is, fine, but not great. But you're getting counting stats from him even when he's not really hitting. So if you're looking at like, if you're saying like, this is the floor, like this is the bottom, and the bottom is essentially like a top 225 player, then even if he makes even like moderate increases, like doesn't get back to what we thought he was going to be, but he pushes to be a top 150 player. And I don't know that you want to drop a guy who's a top 150 player, even in a poor year, because if he does things that we think that he could do, he still could very well have a strong second half of the season. I mean, if you're looking at what's going on right now, like under the hood, he's popping the ball up a lot more, which is why the fly ball rate is up. He is chasing less out of the zone, though. He's swinging less overall. Called strike rate is up. It's possible he's just being a little too passive and getting himself into bad counts that are resulting in him swinging at pitches that he can't really do that much damage on. And so, like, at 27 years old, I don't really believe like we're seeing some decline. I think it's more of an approach issue, and the Yankees are going to play him every day. So I'd rather hold.
Even approach issue is probably something of a mental issue as well. Like Gleyber Torres, similar to crosstown mate Pete Alonso. These guys are both having strangely not the best years in contract seasons. The pressure can mount when you know there's a lot of money at stake, especially on as good of a team as the Yankees are. And it's just there's no way that Gleyber Torres' total baseball ability just dried up this fast. Like there's a guy who still every single year of his career is 20 homer, 260 guy, 10 to 12 steals. Like if you get what that would be truncated for the next 55, 60% of the season we have left, that's even better than you're saying top 150 player. It could be very easily a top 100 player if he just becomes even 10% worse than his career averages starting tomorrow. So I'd be hard pressed to drop him unless there's like a glaring need and you see like a very obvious screaming ad. Like if there's like Helio Ramos is still out there, that's something you might make the move for, but I wouldn't get cute with it.
Yeah, the contract point is a good one. It's like we're seeing him pressing. We're seeing him trying to do too much on some of these swings. And that's common, right? It's he's looking at a contract that could, the ability to sign a contract that's like life-changing amounts of money, right? As a 27-year-old professional baseball player, he could be looking at like a 4 or 5 year deal, or like what he's hoping for. And so, maybe a little bit of a reset over the All-Star break, whatever it is, allows him to kind of to reset in that way. I'm going to take another Ben Rice question here because I think he is going to be popular topic here, but Basebone asked Rice or David Fry. We have seen Fry kind of come back off that hot start a little bit. The interesting thing is that Fry profiled as more of like a lefty masher heading into the season prior to gaining more playing time. And obviously, Rice will hit far more against righties. The last 2 weeks, even 3 weeks, have not really been kind to David Fry. He is hitting only 182 over his last 10 games. The power has dried up a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I think this is a short side platoon guy coming into the year who had a really hot stretch, and I think I might rather take a shot on Rice, given that he's going to play more against right-handed pitching and is in a really nice home park for his power. So yeah.
When you asked me Rice or Fry, I felt like you were the deli man asking me my side order for lunch after we got
that
here.
is always Fry,
Yeah,
is it not? I mean,
Rice or Fry. I mean, it depends on what I'm getting. I don't know, but when I
true.
see as bad as the results have been for Fry over the last week and a half, the quality of contact still hasn't really changed from where it was. His last 10 game, the xWOB is still about 400, which would be one of the best in all of baseball. So just seeing that until the Guardians show a willingness to take him out of the lineup, especially before we see the Yankees have a willingness to play Rice against lefties, which likely wouldn't happen. You're much more likely to get a righty who's going to go in against righties than the lefty who's going to stay against the lefties. Like Ben Rice, we know he's guaranteed for more, but he's not. There's not much of a breadth, not much of a gradient of how much the playing time can increase or decrease given what we know now. Where Fry has put himself in the lineup until they start taking him out. I think I would still roll with David Fry. I'm trying to roll up the recent batting alignments for the Guardians. He sat against the righty on Sunday. Okay.
He's still in the lineup most days and hitting in the middle of the order most days. And to your point, like, even though the batting average in June has been bad, it's been a 13% strikeout rate. Like, he's still making a lot of contact. Pulling the ball a lot, hitting the ball on the ground a lot in June, which is not ideal if you're looking for power. But I get, like, I get trying to hold on to the guy who has produced already this year versus the guy who is not done anything. Yeah. But I think it is honestly like a personal preference. Like I really do think it's a toss up. I don't think you're getting from David Fry what you got early on in the season, and I'm okay making the move, but I don't think it's a move you have to make.
Yeah, for sure. And the Guardians don't have a lot of help coming in corner outfield, where Fry has been playing more than catcher, and it's just they don't have much of a choice, and they keep throwing him out there. Really,
yeah. Let's stick with corner outfielders for a second. I know Basebone asked this other question. I'll try to spread them out, but there was a segue here that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily love like rest of season questions. I think more it's like, who would you prefer to add? So points leagues here. We can tackle this question for all league types, but points league specifically, we know reward like home runs, stolen bases, things of that nature. The question is Andrew Vaughn, Carlos Santana, Tyler Soderstrom, or Ryan Mountcastle. For me, Mountcastle is my clear preferred top option. And then I think I might go Andrew Vaughn. Like, I think the power is starting to play up a little bit. He's looking much better. He still doesn't lift the ball a lot. He still doesn't pull the ball a lot. So I don't know that you're getting a tremendous amount of power. Carlos Santana is running hot right now, but we've seen him do this before. I guess in a points league, Santana's power might be more believable. So in a points league, you might go Mountcastle, Santana, Vaughn. In a regular league, I might go Mountcastle, Vaughn, Santana. And I know Soderstrom has legit power. I put him fourth because the team context isn't great. I don't really believe in the contact. The strikeout issues are the largest of any of these four guys. And so for me, he's the fourth option there.
Yeah, I almost think that whenever we're getting a points league question, the league will probably skew a bit shallower, be a 10 or a 12 team. Mm-hmm. And I think when you skew that, I agree with you that Mountcastle is the clear one, but I think it's hard to dispute Vaughn after that, because what we're really trying to do here is catch lightning in a bottle and see if you can get a guy that winds up being like what Andrew Vaughn's done for his last month of baseball is put himself on the 30-35 homer pace. So 180 WRC plus, a 330 batting average. I think those great stats themselves are a bit untenable, but just the fact that Similar, we were just talking about David Fry. The White Sox are going to play him at first base, and he's going to hit 2, 3, or 4 every single day, no matter what. So just having that every single day, and the fact that he is getting around the ball finally, he is pulling the ball more than he ever has. He is finally getting to power. It's I don't know. There's probably lessons in some other top prospects that are eluding my mind right now that just take maybe that extra year or two, especially when the organization might not give them the best support relative to other organizations. And a guy like Vaughn, who came into the MLB draft in the White Sox organization as one of like the premier college bats who seem to be as can't miss of a hitter as there could be. You forget about him for a few years. He's now finally 26 years old, playing every single day, no longer playing the outfield, which I think really hampered him for a while mentally, just trying to learn a new position that he wasn't exactly equipped to play at all.
Right.
And now this just might just be a moment where Andrew Vaughn has a 2-month stretch where he could kind of buoy a team in a 12-team league for their season, especially points.
Yeah, I love adding Vaughn in a lot of league types. So happy to put him over Carlos Santana for points leagues as well. I'm adding Carlos Santana in certain leagues to ride this hot stretch right now, but I agree with you that I don't believe the upside is as high as Vaughn. We've just seen Santana get hot for stretches before, and Twins are a solid enough lineup now that Royce Lewis is back. Buxton started to kind of like turn things around a little bit of late. So I kind of like all these guys in certain formats.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of questions here about DJ Hers. DJ Hers is a hold and a hope, was what Uncle Ted said. Dad asked, does he have a good long-term outlook, or is this more indicative of the Marlins being bad? My personal opinion is that it's not an indication of the Marlins being bad. It's an indication that DJ Hers had great fastball command in that start, and that's just inconsistent for him. He had 13 whiffs on the fastball alone against the Marlins. He has always been somebody who, had reliever risk due to his command. The changeup is solid against righties. The slider will get swings and misses against lefties. But if he's not throwing the fastball for strikes, the rest of it kind of falls apart. And he did it against the Marlins. And I agree with Uncle Ted, where I think you have to add him because the upside is there, right? If he can command that fastball for strikes, the upside is there. You just have to know that there's reliever risk, there is command risk. So the floor is pretty low. But it's rare that you find pitchers on the waiver wire where you're like, if this clicks, the upside is high. And I kind of think that that's what the case is for Hers. So I don't know that I want to start him in Coors this week. That's why it's like you might add him and keep him on your bench, or you might keep an eye on him if you're in like a 12-team league. Somebody may pick him up and start him in Coors, and it may not go well, and he may fall back to the wire, and that doesn't mean you need to disregard him. I'm curious, but I don't know that it's like this isn't a locked and loaded he's gonna dominate like this going forward.
Yeah, Hers has a repertoire, a tool bag, like a pitch mix I usually don't love, especially seeing from prospects coming up where he's a lefty who doesn't throw especially hard. His fastball is much more east to west. I wonder if that he has a two-seamer that gets mismarked as a four-seamer in certain places, and then his leading pitch after that is a changeup. He has a slider that he mixed in a little bit his first start, but he didn't throw it very often, and it did get tons of swing and misses when he threw it, but I wonder if there's enough of those secondaries to vault up a fastball that probably can't be great on its own, like you were saying, if the command wavers in any way, especially also like you were saying, having an east-west fastball like that, you have to be able to place that, because if you don't place that, eventually you're going to be pitching to a lot of righties every time you pitch. You're going to just wind up on a lot of guys' barrels. So I think there's going to be some starts where DJ Hers, the ball might go out of the yard a lot on him. And it's definitely for me a wait and see. I'll pick him up in a 15 and keep him on my bench and see if I get a good matchup, see if I get any of the bad offenses in the National League, maybe go back to Miami, even maybe start in Citi Field after Grimace goes away. But I'm not jumping to DJ Hurst at the moment.
Grimace is forever. Where do you slot Hers with like the Drew Thorpe, Cade Poviches of the world?
It's all very similar concepts there, but I think Hers has the worst prospect pedigree. He has a middle of the tier, middle of the pack team concept there. I don't know, because I have the same feeling about Thorpe. I let Thorpe go through waivers in every league this week. I gave very small bids. I just see him more as a streamer. Same with Povich, but I trust that team, that offense, that defense, that ballpark significantly more than what I'm getting from these other two guys. And it's hard to evaluate hers after starting against the Marlins because it's a quasi quadruple A team. It's just very difficult. Like we can only take that as a grain of salt. But I'd like to see if he has to feel like throw his slider and cutter significantly more often. But then I don't understand him not wanting to really throw it that much against righties. The changeup works better against the righties. I don't know. I think they're all so close for me. I might just go Povich ahead just because of team context, and then Thorpe, then hers. But it's very thin between them.
I think in a 12-team league, I'm more apt to go with hers. Not this week, obviously, because of Coors, but because I'd rather chase the strikeout upside in a league where I'm going to be cycling through starters anyway. And I do think hers has the best strikeout upside of those three guys. I think Povich is like a kitchen sink. Nothing is great. Everything is pretty average, but he has 5 pitches and he can mix and match. And Thorpe is somebody we know, like an elite changeup. Everything else is kind of like, and you're an elite changeup from a righty against a lot of right-handed hitters is going to limit your strikeout upside. So in a 12 team, I might lean towards hers, but not, again, not this week. DJ Storm Florida asks, do you think Kyle Bradish will be out the rest of the season? I do.
I can't admit that. I love him so much.
I know. I have a hard time drafting pitchers who I already know are hurt and have had no medical procedure done to alleviate the issue. And so I let Bradish go pretty much everywhere. And I know he looked great, but like now we have another UCL issue. I can't. Obviously, like you're putting him in your IL if you have the IL spot and you're waiting to see what the Orioles say. If I'm like in an NFBC format league, I'm moving on. I don't have any belief that he's going to come back healthy, where if I don't have an IL spot, I can't hold him. I just don't think it's going to work out.
Yeah, I agree with you too without the IL spot. And it is frustrating because he had just been getting into a groove this year. He seemed healthy. And in that start on Friday against the Phillies, he threw his hardest pitch of the year. I think it was a 98.3 mile an hour sinker to, I want to say, Harper in the first inning. So I don't think he's going to be out for the year because I think the Orioles know exactly how important Kyle Bradish is, not necessarily to our fantasy seasons, but to what they want to do as a baseball team. So there's a good chance that we get 50 or 60 pitch increments of Kyle Bradish, maybe down the stretch in September, which, again, if you're in NFBC format, that's the kind of thing you might just have to be really shrewd. You might just have to place a dollar bid on August 19th. But in a points league, in a 12-team, in a matchup-based league, even getting 4 to 6 innings of Bradish at a time is probably not worth holding unless you have the IL space.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's talk about another injured pitcher, though. Rhino asks, any thoughts on Clayton Kershaw when he returns? His stats last year were decent given his age. What are your thoughts on Clayton Kershaw?
Do we even have an update on when he may return? I saw a great picture on Twitter this week from Jake Eisenberg, Royals announcer, former Mets announcer, about Cole Reagan's like going up to Clayton Kershaw and like shaking hands before the game, being like the lefty handing the torch to the lefty. But without an update on Kershaw, he's another one where it's just that he's going to be much more important probably to where the Dodgers want to be than where we want to be in fantasy. Like I just don't know.
He's starting a rehab assignment this week in the complex league, but it's going to be a long buildup, and they're still saying like hopefully late July. But they're not going to set a real timeline until he starts making rehab appearances.
Yeah.
And they start seeing how the shoulder responds and whatever. So as of right now, we're operating late July, but he has to check a lot of boxes.
Yeah. And late July probably is the best case scenario because when you begin a rehab assignment, I believe you have exactly 30 days to end that rehab assignment. And that's without a setback, without being shut down. So the best case scenario if he pitches this week would be July 20th, which does make some sense. And then Clayton Kershaw starts pitching up and building up, but you probably don't get more than 80 pitches from him in any start this year. So it's hard the shallower the league, the harder it would be to consider Clayton Kershaw valuable.
Yeah, I'm open to stashing him, not now, but if we start to see rehab assignments that go well and it looks like he's actually going to come back in late July, I'm open to stashing him because I think a 5-inning pitcher on the Dodgers, well, and it being Clayton Kershaw, but it's very different than a 5-inning pitcher on, the Twins or the Red Sox or whatever. Like 5 innings of Clayton Kershaw, who has never really had an ERA over 3, on a Dodgers team is probably going to give you a decent shot at a win and solid ratios. And so I'm okay with that, but I can't do that now because I think there are too many issues with the shoulder capsule thing that he dealt with, which could suggest that he's just not going to be ready at all. And maybe he winds up just like giving them 2 or 3 innings at a time out of the bullpen for the playoff stretch because that's kind of all he's capable of doing. And I don't think we'll know that until we start seeing, what he's going to do when rehab starts. And so Sid asked, like, would you rather stash Kershaw or Kyle Harrison? And I'm not a Kyle Harrison fan, but I'd rather stash Kyle Harrison because I'd rather stash somebody who at this day and time, I feel far more confident is going to pitch this season.
Totally. And Harrison just had a sprained ankle. So I think there's a reasonable chance he's pitching before the All-Star break. And you know that the Giants just, again, over the next 3 months of baseball, have a lot more at stake than the Dodgers. And Harrison was one of their steadiest starting pitchers to this point. There were some bad starts mixed in, but he's someone they somewhat have to lean on for length, depending on what they get from Blake Snell. And there's also a slight worry for me with Kershaw, where last year he was still very effective. He's still basically a 20% strikeout minus walk rate. The ERA, the whip were fantastic, 3-1. But his fastball velocity got down to the lowest it's ever been. It was only average 90 miles an hour. And we've seen this year from Kenta Maeda. I'm not comparing Kenta Maeda to Clayton Kershaw, but just when you cross that threshold of 90 mile an hour fastball, you go beneath it, you start throwing 89s. It seems like everything else takes a big hit. So curious to see where his velocity comes in these rehab starts.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've got, a lot of injury related questions. I guess we'll go with Jettas. James Wood will be activated off the AAA IL today. What is the MLB ETA? I have said from the start, I think it's August. I just don't, and I would need to look at the specific date of like when can they call Wood up where he will keep rookie eligibility so that he can be eligible for Rookie of the Year next year so that they can get a draft pick if he wins Rookie of the Year. I just, that's the cutoff to me. Like, I do understand now the Nationals are in the wild card race because the NL is pure madness. And so theoretically they could call him up prior to that date and make a push. But I don't think the Nationals are going to risk a year of eligibility of James Wood and the possibility of getting a draft pick and all that like future roster building that gives you for a couple extra weeks of production at the MLB level. Like, he is now just coming back. He's going to get a few weeks of time just back at AAA to get back and healthy, which means even if he's crushing, he would be called up in the middle of July. So if you're the Nationals and you call him up in the middle of July and sacrifice all of those benefits, or you wait 2 weeks and call him up in August and you get those benefits, I just think they're going to wait.
I think that the cutoff, I could be incorrect about this, but I believe it has to do with plate appearances and relative to where you are as a qualified hitter. So I think there's a chance that James Wood could probably sneak in a little earlier than where that cutoff would be for most players if he were to sit against left-handed pitching at least for the start. And that could be the way they sneak. But I think that there might be some weird macho head games because I think a lot of baseball teams will play these. I think the Nationals, Dave Martinez seems to relish in them, where Dylan Cruz was called up AAA also today. And this is the day that James Wood's set to be activated to the AAA team. So now it might be like, all right, you guys see each other 1 month, one you's going to the major leagues, somebody earns it. So I think I don't know. I think baseball teams like to do weird things like that. And you look at this Nationals outfield on a daily basis, and it's Jesse Winker, Jacob Young, Lane Thomas, great fantasy player, but he's not the best real life player, with either a Nick Senzel, Edealmar Vargas, Eddie Rosario, Joey Meneses winding up as a DH or another corner spot if Winker's DHing. So I think there is a clear need there, and this Nationals team could make the playoffs. They're really fun right now. Like with Mackenzie Gore at top of the rotation, Abrams at top of the order, like they could make a run. And I think that if they are a team that might be like, we'll sacrifice the extra team building in the future to maybe get the playoff shot this year. I'm not saying they definitely would do that, but I have a feeling one of those two guys, Cruz or Woods, up before August 1st. It's just a gut right now.
Your comment about him being able to come up and sit versus lefties, I think is interesting because it could make him come up a little bit earlier. I think also the Nationals are, again, it depends on how they're doing in this playoff race, but like I think the plan was to like sign guys like Jesse Winker and Eddie Rosario to these short deals to trade them at the deadline to open up the spots for the young guys to then come in. So that's why I was always thinking after the trade deadline, because you move those guys, then you get the young guys up, you get some like whatever low level prospect that you for Jesse Winker that you want to like get a flyer on. But if the Nationals are in contention, they may really wait. And I think that the next month will really determine like whether they believe there's a shot for them or whether they're gonna, sell off some of these parts. Another James Wood question, which is out of Jason Dominguez, Jackson Holliday, and James Wood, who do you guys feel comes up first and makes an impact? And I would have said Dominguez before he landed on the IL last week with a side issue. And the issue with like minor league ILs is we don't really know like the extent of the issue. And I've been looking on a lot about it today. And there's no like sense of, is it a minor little tweak for Dominguez? Was it like a more of a significant oblique issue? Think about like, because of how Dominguez is built, think about like the oblique issues that Seiya Suzuki runs into a lot. Like that's a lot of mass and a lot of torque when you're swinging all the time. Dominguez may run into those kind of issues with his oblique, and the Yankees have no need to rush him right now. So I kind of think like after everything we just talked about, it still may be James Wood up earliest out of all of those guys, because also like Jackson Holliday's 20 years old. He's hitting 270 at AAA. Like 22% walk rate, 22% strikeout rate. Like those are good, but it's not like Jackson Holliday with a 270 batting average, 7 home runs in 50 games is forcing the Orioles to have to call him up based on how he looked early on.
Jackson Holliday also just before the weekend went on the IL with, I believe it was elbow inflammation.
He did. So
we have 3 minor leaguers here. One of them just came off the IL with a hamstring, which that could always be a fickle beast. And the other 2, their teams are so stacked at their positions, there really is an obvious need. The thing, it would have to be, if it's not James Wood, I think he's the only one that gets the shot naturally in the next 6 weeks. But out of the other 2, there basically needs to be both them getting healthy while also someone else becoming unhealthy at the major league level. And it makes me also just like look at the rest of AAA right now to find a player that could make an impact. It's hard to even say any of them. And I look at a guy like, it's a sneaky one, and he hasn't really been talked about for a call up yet, but it's Jace Young from the Tigers, who's ripping the cover off the ball right now in AAA. He has a 130 WRC plus and has been better over the last couple of weeks, getting to home run power. Detroit needs bats anywhere they can find them. So if he has a use, they're going to find a place for him. And Detroit is one of those ballparks that's very difficult to hit in April and May, and it gets progressively easier to hit in as the year progresses. So I don't think he'll have the same impacts any of the guys on here, but I think he might get the first major league plate appearance of anybody named on this list.
Yeah, I like that call for sure. We'll keep the injuries going. Who would you rather have upon return in an OPS league, Josh Young or Noelvi Marte? In an OPS league, I'm going to go with Josh Young. Yeah. I understand we have a wrist injury, and so that might sap some power. I just think his power is more legitimate, so I'd rather have Josh Young in an OPS league. But it's super close if you're talking about like standard 5x5, because Marte's speed is obviously going to be better. The home ballpark is better. The batting average should be really good. Like I expect him to hit the ground running because of MLB's weird rule that he's suspended from Major League Baseball games but can play in minor league baseball games. And so he's getting rehab appearances, even though he's not rehabbing from anything other than being suspended. So I might lean Josh Young in OPS, and I think I might lean Noelvi Marte in like a standard 5x5.
It's frustrating because I love Josh Young. Now back-to-back questions about the Youngs, but he looked like he was going to start this year and come ripping out of the gate. Like the way he played in those first few games, I was very amped. And even the fact that he stole a base in his first 4 games, I was like, oh, that's amazing. If he's going to actually steal a couple of bases. Matt already matched his total from 2023 in, I believe it was 4 games played. But he is also started his minor league rehab assignment already. And Bruce Bochy said their goal for him is 30 to 40 plate appearances, which to me might not be enough to know if the power actually is okay or not okay coming off the wrist. So then based on also the way that team has been hitting, which is weird because how well they hit last year, the Rangers have been, I'm totally jinxing the Mets tonight, but they've really struggled to get the bats going for the last month now. Noelvi's walking into an infield where there's going to be an opportunity for him to jump in and play immediately. He's going to walk into a ballpark that we know is very easy to hit in. If you would have asked me preseason before Noelvi was suspended or before Jung was injured, I would have definitely leaned Jung probably heavily. But as of right now, rest of season, I think there's a good chance that we see Noelvi come up. But it's close. It's very close. It really just depends if Jung's healthy or not when he steps back on the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. We got some closer questions.
Whoa.
Do you think Tyson Miller will close games for the Cubs soon?
I mean, why not?
I mean, anybody can close games for the Cubs right now. Oh, actually, nobody can. Anybody's given the opportunity. I don't want anybody on the Cubs right now. And if I had somebody, they would be on my bench in the hopes that in a deep league, in the hopes that they were figuring it out. I still think, like, if you're looking at, are the Cubs going to make a change? Even though the surface level results have not been there, if the Cubs were going to move on from Hector Neris, Mark Leiter Jr. has been better than Tyson Miller in many respects over the last 2 weeks, month, etc. He has a better Sierra. He has a better strikeout minus walk rate. The whip is way higher. We know Mark Leiter Jr. is giving up runs. So he's not a slam dunk. But I don't think Tyson Miller is doing anything to me to vault over those guys. I think he vaults over like Hayden Wesneski, who had been getting the 7th inning. And I think Tyson Miller kind of like takes over that role. But I don't love it. I know Julian Merriweather's coming back like around the All-Star break, and that could be interesting for the Cubs. But to me, this is a team that it's like a glaring need to go out and make a trade. If they want to contend, like if they're trying to make a push at the playoffs, they need to go out and trade for a closer. Maybe get like Chris Martin from the Red Sox or Kenley Jansen from the Red Sox, depending on how much you want to give up. But I don't love any of these options on the Cubs right now.
Yeah, you don't see guys like Tyson Miller get save chances too often. He throws an 89-mile-an-hour fastball, and he doesn't have great vertical break on it. I know right now Stuff Plus actually loves Tyson Miller, but it's almost strange to me that, again, 89-mile-an-hour fastball without good vert has a 122 Stuff Plus. It's just he doesn't look like the closer. He doesn't really fit the bill for what you normally see from a closer. But also, no one in the Cubs bullpen fits the bill of what you would normally see from a closer right now. So you might be able to sneak into a few save opportunities for a guy like Tyson Miller, but the downside of that is you could be risking a catastrophic blow up or two. You could be risking 5 earned runs in an inning and a third. Like you don't. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes nabbing a few saves in the middle of the season isn't worth what it could do to your ratios. Maybe that's just, again, but sometimes I play it that way. I like to be a little safer with the ERA.
No, I think that's the same. Like anybody who picked up like Jalen Beeks or Tyler Kinley in the Rockies situation is looking at that same sort of thing. Like you don't always need to chase the saves. I don't believe when the pitcher himself is liable to hurt you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I know that he's back in AAA, and the stats weren't very good when he was in the major leagues, but I think stuff-wise, his name is Jose Cuas. He has a little bit more juice than anybody, and it's a shame if they had like a guy like Jeremiah Estrada in this bullpen. The opportunity,
I know
and the stuff working together.
Like that?
Yeah, that'd be easy.
Raphael asks, in a 10-team category league, would you drop Yusei Kikuchi for Cutter Crawford? I personally am more a fan of Cutter Crawford, but they're super close to me. I believe in Cutter Crawford's like deeper arsenal of pitches. And so I would lean towards Cutter Crawford, but I think that they're so close that you're kind of, especially in a 10-team league, you could play matchups with them a little bit. Cutter Crawford is at Cincinnati this weekend. Yusei Kikuchi is at Cleveland. That's like a little bit of a better matchup for Kikuchi, just because playing in Great American Ballpark is not great. I know that Cutter Crawford just pitched well against the Phillies and the Yankees, which should answer pretty much all of those questions. But I could see holding on to Kikuchi for another start. But I think those guys are pretty close, and I give the edge to Cutter overall.
This is, especially in a 10-team league, this whole question does come down to matchups, and you probably, to make a more informed decision here, is probably best to look forward. And I have Kikuchi's schedule coming up here. So the next 3 starts are at Cleveland, who has been a good offense this year, and the changes they've made to that ballpark, it plays very hitter friendly now.
That's true. Yeah,
and true. Very home run friendly to a guy like Kikuchi, who sometimes falls victim to the long ball. And then the next start is home against the Yankees, and then home against the Astros. So home against the Astros doesn't have the same fear it had a year or two ago, and home against the Yankees is not in Yankee Stadium. And then after that, he gets at San Francisco, and then maybe at Arizona, but then it's the All-Star break. So maybe option C. I haven't seen the third option here, but I don't want to start Kyler Crawford in Great American Ballpark either. But I'd like those two both objectively, but in a 10-team league, it's definitely going to be about matchups, and I'm afraid of those next three matchups for Kikuchi the way he's been going.
Yeah, I agree on that. Let's see, what else do we got here? We talked about. Oh, we didn't talk about George Springer. I talked about George Springer a little bit earlier. I wrote about him as somebody I think you could drop in 12-team leagues. This question from Basebone is Peterson or Springer? I'm going to assume this here is Jock Peterson, given the spelling and the fact that we're talking outfield for outfield. Where do you line up in a Jock Peterson or George Springer right now? And I guess that leads to just overall thoughts on George Springer right now, and if you're willing to move on.
Yeah. If this is a daily league, probably Peterson, because similar to conversation we had before with Ben Rice, like he's not going to be in lineup against the lefty, but he's going to crush the ball against the righty. Whereas if I still want volume, like the volume has been pretty bad this entire year, but like I'll still put Springer in there. His plate discipline's still been okay, even though he hasn't been aggressive as he's been in the past. The power's not there, but the defense is fine. The Blue Jays have too much invested in to take him out of the lineup with regularity. He's still gonna steal 15 more bases the rest of the year. In a weekly league, I probably would still lean to Springer, but if you had daily moves, I'm rostering Jock Peterson instead.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm happy. I'm happy to move on from Springer in 12-team leagues if I find somebody I think will give me consistent playing time and decent production. I was looking into it. Like, I think it was fair to come into the season saying, okay, George Springer is like a 260, 270 hitter. He'll go 20-20. He'll hit leadoff for a pretty solid Blue Jays lineup. And there's nothing spectacular there, but it's pretty solid production. And then I think we're like, okay, now the Blue Jays lineup is proving to be not as good as we thought it was. Springer's now hitting like sixth in a much worse lineup. So the run production, the RBI production is not there. He's being pitched differently this year. I looked it up. He's being pitched low in the zone, way more than last year, almost like over 5% more low in the zone. He's been pitched low in the zone more than he has in like the last 5 or 6 years. So it's leading to a career high ground ball rate from him and a career low ideal contact rate. And I do think that's a little bit of the way he's being pitched. Like, he's not being given anything that he can lift. And even though he probably wasn't, that he wasn't going to be a huge homer hitter anyway, like, he's being given pitches that he can drive into the ground. He's driving them into the ground. That is going to hurt the batting average. That's going to sap the power into like maybe like a 15 homer upside. And so I just like, is George Springer now like a 15-15 guy who hits in the bottom third of the order in a mediocre lineup? Like, I can find a lot of guys like that on the waiver wire in a 12-team league. In a 15-team league, I could understand holding a little longer because he plays every day and you're hoping for some base level consistency in his production. But I think I'm done, and I'm willing to take the risk that somebody else scoops him up and he gets hot, because I think hot for George Springer is not anything that's going to like win somebody a league.
You're also seeing just a clear sign of aging from George Springer, which I like to look at with if I want to take a shot on old bats that are struggling, whereas his run value against fastballs has cratered over the last 2 years, where Springer was always known as a guy who was dead red, can turn any fastball in the league. And now last year he was about average with like, not average, worse than average, but like a pure 0 run value against fastballs. Just got 0.01 of run value over 100 pitches. Where already this year is a -2 run value on fastballs, almost -1 per 100 pitches. And now you're also seeing that in a year where fastballs are being thrown less and less often, the pitchers are actually throwing them more often against Springer. He went from 54%, seeing fastballs 54% of the time in 2023 to over 58% of the time this year, which is a meaningful adjustment, especially when it goes against the grain of the rest of Major League Baseball. So this just might be old George Springer. It's also his max exit velocity is down 5 miles an hour over last year. It's just probably old now. So yeah, maybe he's a 15-15 guy. So it all kind of depends if that's what you need to be filled in. You're not the old George Springer.
Yeah. We'll go two more. This one I think is real quick. Would you drop Chris Bryant for Jake Bowers in an NL only league? I get this question in an NL only league because you're looking for anybody with a pulse.
Yeah.
And yes, because Chris Bryant's on the IL right now, and Jake Bowers is still playing against most right-handed pitching. And so I could see it. I'd want to say, hey, Chris Bryant, he plays in Coors, like you got to hold on, but he's been hurt so often. He hasn't been particularly good. Jake Bowers hasn't really been particularly good, but he still has a good home ballpark. And he's playing right now, and he's also giving you something with steals. So there is like more category juice because more depth of 7 steals right now in the year. Like he's giving you something there when you get nothing from Bryant. So I could see making that swap in an NL only league, but I'd be seriously looking for an upgrade when some prospect comes up, or, after the trade deadline, if somebody comes over to the NL. Like I don't really want either of those guys.
Yeah, the language around Chris Bryant's injury was also kind of strange, where they said he went in the IL for, I think it was a side or a back. Then he also said, I think there was a problem with his knee or his ankle. And I think the quote was
listed as having a rib contusion on Fangraphs.
Yeah, and then there was a quote somewhere, because I have him the Dynasty League on Fantrax that had it. They were like, "This is also injured. It's going to be a long time before he plays." So yeah, you could feel comfortable doing this, but again, Jake Bowers is just he's the loosest definition of a warm body we basically have in the National League right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. All right, last one is from Jeddah, asking if we are buying a Carlos Correa resurgence. And I need to kind of like push back a little bit on the resurgence part of this here, because like I guess last year the batting average was down, but I don't like Carlos Correa has kind of been like a 280 hitter who's going to hit 20 plus homers, for like 3 of the last 4 years. And I kind of think that that's what he might settle in to be this year, as a guy who winds up hitting 280 with 20 plus homers and no stolen bases, very low strikeout rate, solid walk rate. Like I kind of think that's who he is. I don't know if we're getting a resurgence as much as we're just getting Carlos Correa being back to the guy he was for 3 of the last 4 years. And so I don't know if it's exciting, but I think it's certainly like a 280 guy who'll hit 20 homers while hitting in the middle of a decent lineup is worthy of putting in your middle infield spot in a lot of leagues. But hopefully you drafted around him knowing that you were going to get no speed from that spot.
It's funny. Can you guess when Carlos Correa stole his last base?
I mean, I have his stat page up right now, so I know, but it's a long time ago.
It's 2019, the last time Carlos Correa stole a base. So yeah, different world then. But I'm buying a bit that's a resurgence, because the Carlos Correa you saw last year was someone who if his name wasn't Carlos Correa, he barely even warranted a spot in a major league batting order. Like he barely held the 300 on base. His defense was about average, and he just didn't really seem to be getting around on the baseball like he had in the past. Whereas this year, this is the Carlos Correa we've come to expect. You're getting a lot more in batting average, but I think that'll probably sink down. But also, will it? I don't know. Like there's looking now, like the shape of Carlos Correa's last 3 seasons, knowing that the litany of foot issues he's dealt with, he might have just played hurt all of last year, just kept playing through it because of the contract, because of the need at shortstop for Minnesota, because they just needed him to line up every day, what he thought he could be. But as of right now, there are few hitters in baseball who are hitting the ball better than Carlos Correa, better quality of contact. 877 OPS in this run environment is borderline astounding. And the fact that he is able to do this, even without the speed, like if you found Carlos Correa in a points league or an OPS league, you are on your hands and knees thanking the world right now, because he can change a league the way he's playing and the way he was valued in the offseason.
Yeah. I mean, 351 BABIP right now in that 308 batting average, like that's going to come down. But again, you're looking at a guy who maybe finishes the year, like I said, like around 280, which is still a pretty solid batting average. I know projections have him like 260, 270 for the rest of the way, which kind of makes sense for all of that, but that's still solid. You got to cross your fingers and hope Royce Lewis stays healthy and Byron Buxton keeps producing, because that just makes the lineup around Correa a little bit stronger and helps with like the run totals and the RBIs and things like that. If those guys go down again or out of the lineup, we've seen that Twins lineup look pretty gross when they're not fully healthy. So just one thing to keep in mind there as well. That's going to do it for us here On our Tuesday Q&A, James, thanks for making it this time. Super happy to have you on. We will be doing this every Tuesday. I think DJ is back next Tuesday, 1 p.m. So make sure you check us out. You can watch live on YouTube. You can watch on Twitch. You can ask us questions on YouTube or Twitch. You can ask us questions as soon as we post the link, even if you know you're not going to be here for the show. And we'll get to all of your questions. You can also reach James and I on Twitter. James, where can you be found on Twitter?
Just my name, just like you guys see it down here, but with an underscore in between James and Schiano.
And you can reach me at Samulski NYC. We're happy to answer any of your questions. And we'll see you next week on the Rotoworld Fantasy Baseball